and welcome to the John Paul and Mike Show. My name is Paul Holmes.
And I am Donald Trump. Whoa, no, sorry, I am not. That should get you going. Yeah, John Jurisic here. Labor market consultant, Harbor Digital Media, and realtor, Peninsula Remax.
All right.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really good, actually. How about you?
Well, I'm so pleased to see that there's two pictures in the back.
It's
from one last week to two.
And bigger. We moved the dolphin picture out into the dining room, and this picture here of the train, for those of you who are listening, is and not watching, is original CP Rail promotional poster.
Wow.
From I don't know, early 1900s, maybe late 1800s, and then the Titanic one behind me is from when they had the Titanic exhibition at the Royal British Columbia Museum in 2007. So
there's something actually significant back there.
It's
well, I don't have a clue what's behind my head.
It's meaningful. Yeah, you don't have like degrees or something on the wall.
There are degrees. There's books. There's all that stuff over here.
Fahrenheit or
Celsius? A summary of all the conferences I've been to. And
yeah.
So,
you keep all that.
Oh yeah, it's such a great. I look at them occasionally and go, "Wow, that was a long time ago." You know.
I'm such a minimalist. I honestly I just feel great anytime I can get rid of something.
Well, you got the Titanic like right over your head. It's like a hat.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll figure out something a little better. I think we're going to set up a new room in our house, get the audio just right, have maybe a green screen. So
I will forever have whatever I got back there, and
well,
you will have amazing stuff going on.
for about $40, you can get a green screen shield that you can put behind yourself. It's just basically a tube on the bottom and a tube on the top, and then green fabric that connects. And then you can put whatever you want behind you.
Oh my gosh!
You could be anywhere and do anything.
So it could be John Paul and Mike from the Adriatic.
Yeah, I can be reporting live from Paris, and you could be reporting live from Shanghai. I mean, it would be amazing, right? We'd just be in different places all the time. People will think, "Wow, what an incredible life these people live."
Exactly right.
And
we're the YouTubers that travel around the world, but they never seem to be moving.
We can virtue signal from cities all over the world, John.
Exactly.
Just like an Instagram model. I mean, it's perfect. Except
right.
We're not Instagram models yet.
Well, we might be in somebody's eyes.
Yeah, I suppose.
Is it always in the eye of the beholder?
I often because of social media and early adoption, I often have more Instagram followers than a lot of teenagers I meet, and so I do like to lord that over them a little bit.
Right on.
How did you get 1,000 followers or whatever, right? And I'd be like, well, it's you can tell I'm a very attractive guy, and I'm such a great photographer as well, and they don't buy any of that. So.
Yeah, well, I completely buy it. And now that we're going to fake that we're in other cities, you can really work that. You can work that.
Speaking of social media, my teenage son is now on Reddit, and unlike me, I've been on Reddit for 10 years.
Okay.
I was so excited because I got my 10-year cake.
Yeah, right.
So you go onto my profile, you can see it's like, ooh, I've been on there for 10 years.
I'm sure all those Reddit people really congratulated you for that too, right?
Nobody at all.
Yeah, they were so kind.
So here's the thing is I don't really use Reddit, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't want to use my own name because, of course, I created an account with my own name, which is just not something people do on Reddit.
Right.
But anyway, I did anyway. So after 10 years, the amount of karma I have, which is all the up votes that you get minus all the down votes, and maybe there's some other algorithm.
It's a net karma vote.
I'm pretty sure it's just net upvotes minus net downvotes. I think that's how it works. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, they call it karma.
Yeah.
And and so my teenage son, who just turned 14 recently, posted something to the Minecraft subreddit, and it was a little video he made, and it went viral. And so now, after less than 6 months on the platform, he has about 100 times as much karma as I have after 10 years.
Really? What kind of video did he post?
It was a Minecraft, like he was demonstrating something that he'd done in Minecraft. And I don't actually really, I don't know if you're familiar with Minecraft. I've played it a fair bit, but I don't, I'm not like an expert trying to figure out.
I'm not familiar with it, but you know what it does trigger in me? That amazing presentation you gave at Social Media Camp about these platforms that are not common. They're not the usual ones.
Yeah.
And I know that you and I were thinking of what to say, and we really do operate best when we're just ad-libbing. So what other platforms are there that constitute what they call the dark web? So one of them is, which really isn't dark at all. It's just restricted entry. Isn't that right?
I don't think, the dark web is something completely different. The dark web is it's not
actually dark.
Yeah, the dark web is where you go to buy drugs and guns and human trafficking, and I'm sure there's other good stuff there too.
Careful, we're gonna have to edit that out.
Sorry,
good is an operational good. It's efficient. You can pay easily.
Trying to sound like
necessarily too good.
Trying to sound like Donald Trump there. They're all criminals, and I'm sure there's good people too. Anyway,
perfect.
So, no, so the dark web is a completely separate thing that's not accessible through the regular HTTP web protocol. I see.
It's a different protocol. That's the key technology piece. You actually got to jump onto something else.
Yeah, it's I'm not, honestly, don't understand the tech side of it because I've never really delved that much into it. My understanding is that most of what we would consider to be the dark web runs on the torrent network.
Okay.
Which is completely different than. But I think it's kind of a generic term. There could be 1,000 ways it's run, but essentially it's not run. It's not run through a web browser using the HTTP protocol.
Okay. So you'd access another network, sort of like a Bluetooth technology, but not really. But it's a virtual technology that you sign into.
Well, I think so. The fundamental of the internet is just numbers, right? And then we've built this system of addresses on top of the internet numbers, right? But at the very root of it, you could run any number of different services. We just invented this one called HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and then we started creating web pages and hyperlinks and everything else. And so a lot of people, that's what they think the internet is.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I.
And then some apps and things, right? But the internet.
So there are other protocols or other highways that run on the big highway, and other cars.
Yeah.
Okay. And
a lot of that's typically pretty invisible to users, but it's constantly going on. There's services pinging each other, and there's all sorts of stuff happening in the background, right?
Yeah.
But most end users don't care about that. And
but Reddit is an HTTP protocol.
Exactly.
Access in which, but it's pretty rough. It's not a genteel, hey, what did you have for breakfast today, right?
Well, Reddit's a bit of everything, actually. Reddit's actually a really good example. And I said that a talk I gave 3 or 4 years ago, I said, you could walk down the street and ask, 10 people if they've heard of Reddit, right? And you would get blank stares from more than half of them. And then you would get, oh yeah, from some of the others, or I've heard of it, right? And yet, the thing that was so interesting about it at the time was that it had such a profound impact on popular culture. So much of the meme culture and anything that kind of went viral, almost universally started with something on Reddit.
That's right. I remember that. If you wanted to get something viral, you'd get it going there first.
Totally.
And then it sort of spring onto the more general
Yeah.
platforms.
Well, and that's a great example of that is like a YouTube video going viral. A bunch of the ones that, from that sort of era, if you will, a bunch of people on Reddit would say, hey, let's all, and usually it was, in some ironic way, like some really bad music video or something that, most people would look at and go, what is this crazy thing, right? But they would make a point of sending a whole horde of people over to YouTube to watch and like and post a nice comment.
Right.
And then it would start showing up in the suggestions for everybody else. Oh, this user likes music, so maybe they'll like this music video. And everyone was confused. They'd get this recommended video of some really awful music video with like 1 million views and 100,000 upvotes, and they're just like, why is this here? This doesn't make any sense. And you're basically being trolled by a bunch of people on Reddit, but you didn't have to be on Reddit for it to happen. It just, they created a phenomenon, and there's all kinds of stuff like that. It still happens, but, and it happens with 4chan, and, it's ugly stepsister 8chan or Infinite Chan.
Yeah. Which is where a lot of the really violent nurturing happens.
Oh yeah. Those platforms, 4chan and 8chan. 8chan has a particularly bad reputation at the moment because it's where all the domestic terrorists
hang out,
lone gunman type. Well, they don't hang out. They post their manifestos on there.
Yeah.
And so it has a particularly bad reputation right now. But it's, I'm sure you would be able to go there, and I wouldn't go there just because I don't want to be on an FBI watch list.
Yeah, right.
But I'm sure you could go there and find really benign things as well. But
right, and of course, none of this has to do with what some folks call fake news. That being fake accounts being created by the hundreds of thousands to influence. These are real people chatting about bad stuff in bad places.
Yeah.
Whereas trolling and fake accounts, that's a completely different can of worms, isn't it? It's just fake accounts, and there's half a dozen people managing 100,000 accounts.
Could be, yeah.
Right.
The Russian bots.
Right, or the Chinese bots, or the
or whatever.
400-pound guy sitting in his bed.
The Russian bots has just become a meme, by the way. That's like, people just say, "Oh, it's the Russian bots" whenever anything funny happens to be.
Yeah, right.
But
hey,
or
so
on Twitter and accuse somebody that you know really well of being a Russian bot. So
Hey, so today the Canadian election was called.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
thoughts?
No.
Hey, we used to have speakers, right? And we still should. And but I'm not so sure that we can actually ever get to what somebody honestly thinks. It's all just so sort of crafted and coordinated that we would just get sort of the platforms, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, this is my, when I said no, of course I'm being ironic because I have a gazillion thoughts.
Yeah, I know that.
What I'd really love to see is a little authenticity, and
yeah, me too.
Honestly, I'm at the point in my life where if I could find a politician that I might disagree with like 3/4 of what they stand for, but at least they're being authentic, I might just vote for that person. I just find all of it so inauthentic. The example I thought of this morning, and it's not just to pick one, that I like or dislike, because I don't really like any of them, to be honest. But somebody posted about Trudeau's campaign launch, and I guess he was asked a bunch of questions about SNC-Lavalin, and understandably dodged every single question. But one of the things about Trudeau that I've noticed over the years, and maybe it's just selectively noticed because it's just the times I've been watching, but I don't think the guy answers very much. Like I remember watching Question Period, and the opposition politician asks the question, the prime minister, and then, you know, if the prime minister is around and wants to answer the question, they stand up and they answer the question, or they get somebody else to do it for them, right? But with almost 100% consistency, I actually can't remember one time that I saw Justin Trudeau actually address the question he was asked. And we know enough about politics to know that there is a thing called staying on message, right? You don't want to get dragged down a dirt path, you know, into some, you know, talk, you know, the soundbite of the day is you talking about some, you know, wonky policy thing, right? And, you know, you end up in some, you know, saying something that can be taken out of context. Totally get that, right? And the problem is, how can we as a society have a political environment wherein it's safe to actually sincerely answer a question and not have to worry about the gotcha politics? And maybe the answer is no. Maybe
the answer is no, because in every instance there is a gotcha moment.
I know.
You know, as we just talked about, someone will post somewhere,
Yeah.
and someone will be mad about that, and it's sort of, you go, why would I do that? Okay, I'm really passionate about economic development. Okay, you ask, and I'm going to stay on message. So you ask me any question about anything, and I'll answer you back in what I want to say to you.
Well, you just all you need is the script. Like,
try it.
All right. Here you go. What do you think about the failed India moon landing?
You know, I think that's an excellent example of research and development spending, which, you know, our country and my party are doing more than any other party. And I think that's something that we should just really promote. You know, it was weird. Because during the 2000s, when I was involved with the chamber and we had to, I got to be good at this, you know. They literally go, well, you know, it's kind of raining today. I don't think it's going to be a good day for you. Well, you know, I think this just reinforces the mental strength that we need towards spending more money on economic development. Like, you can literally, and Trudeau is a master at that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I am annoyed by that.
He's beyond mastery. Like, he's a doctorate level of dodging the question. And I do like, and I feel like, and again, it's not, I don't mean to just pick him out. He just happens to be the prime minister. I'm sure that the others are the same. I found generally Elizabeth May tends to be a little more, you know, she'll tend to shoot from the hip a little bit more often, right? And I personally find that an admirable quality, not a problem. But, you know, then this morning on my
But it's getting her in trouble.
Oh, yeah. This morning on my Facebook feed, somebody's posting about, you know, her, you know, if some of her candidates want to reopen the abortion debate, that's okay. And I don't know what I didn't look into it, but I was just like, yeah, that's probably her, you know, going off script, right?
Well, here's what it was. And here I'll just give you a context. So the interview was around one of the Green Party platform policy, operational sort of tenets is that they will not whip their MPs.
Yeah.
So they're allowed, whipping being in the parliamentary sense.
not the physical.
Not actually. Yeah. So they won't herd them like cats.
Yeah.
And so then what that reporter cleverly did was say, well, then what if the abortion issue is raised?
Yeah.
And if you're
gotcha.
Right, it's a gotcha moment, and she was got.
Yeah.
And said, well, then they're allowed to vote according to their principles.
Yeah.
Well, that was immediately interpreted as Green Party in favor of abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to which they are not.
Or you're the opposite.
Right. So you know, there's a moment of authenticity that completely backfired on her. I don't know how to answer that question that, Paul, you've posed. How to bring authentic debate to, now you've just, like, you sold your business, Social Media Camp. You're a global expert on this stuff. You get how we literally can't be authentic.
No.
because someone will manipulate the message.
Well, and there's no room for nuance either, right? Like you and I can have a one-on-one conversation, but somebody later on can pull anything we say right now completely out of context,
Totally right.
and we could wear that for the rest of it. Basically, we're risking everything every time we say anything.
Totally.
I can say something along the lines of, you know, according to Adolf Hitler,
Yeah.
dot, dot, and then everything after the dot, dot belongs to me, right?
Right. So if you're head of a national party,
Yeah,
you're not going to take that risk. You're going to stay in your lane.
yeah.
Like so I don't know where
Isn't
we're
it
going
gross
to get.
though? Isn't it gross? Like, and maybe the world's always been this way, John, and I'm being naive.
No,
but
because
really,
there was a public life and a private life, and there was actually a large private life where people would meet in dinners. They might meet at the ball field. They might meet at work. They might meet in places that isn't being recorded, and they would actually share their thoughts.
yeah.
But there is now nowhere, even our local municipal politicians can't go, where they won't be gotcha'd.
Yeah.
It's how you. So where does that authentic dialogue happen, Paul? On Reddit?
No. It's nowhere. Nowhere is
So nowhere, right?
Dinner tables.
I mean, the thought was that it might happen.
It's getting banned from everywhere else. Like if you have a controversial opinion, right? Like, you know, for example, you know, you say, suppose, and this is a good thing somebody can take out of context and pretend that I said it. Suppose you think that being transgendered is a mental disorder, and that
Can be fixed.
we shouldn't accept, you know, those people for the way that they want to identify, but we should instead try to fix them, right? Suppose that's your opinion, which, by the way, I don't know what the number would be, but I would suspect it's probably half the people or more in Canada, and probably more in the US, would probably agree with that position if pressed, right?
Well, it would certainly be more than a little.
More than a little, yeah. So
Unbelievably so.
But if you go on Twitter and you say that, that's a bannable offense, right? If you go on Facebook and you say that, that's a bannable offense. If you go to you know, a public building and put posters up to that effect, they will take your posters down, probably arrest you for mischief, right? You know what I mean? Like there's not too many places left where there isn't some control on free speech, right? And so the whole principle of free speech has been called into question by our culture, right? Are we in a post-free speech environment where, you know, we just all have to accept the fact that there are certain dogmatic things that we just don't talk about? And
well, not only just don't talk
I think
about.
It's like on principle, and I don't think I have any particularly controversial views, but on principle, I think it's terrible. I really strongly feel like free speech should be free speech, period, with the exception of if somebody incites violence, right? Or incites, or you know, but it has
violence.
Even that, I think, has to be very specific, right? But if you want to have the most controversial views, and you want to come out and you want to talk about them, I think that's a good thing, because
this did happen on.
So let me just finish the thought, and just before you go on. So suppose you have this, like, a very black and white. You and I would just sit down and agree and think that's a terrible opinion, right? That makes you kind of a terrible person for having that opinion, right? We don't have to name it, but I think we could probably think of half a dozen things, right? So if somebody has that opinion and they want to talk about it, I think that's great for a couple of reasons. Number one, they expose themselves, right? So maybe I don't want to be best friends with that person, right? Number two is we can talk about it, right? I can engage that person, try to understand why it is they have this negative opinion, and maybe, by getting them to think about it a little more, maybe change their mind about it, right? The classic phrase is sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? And I
But
really,
okay, here you're assuming a certain level playing field and equal ability to think objectively, which is sort of assumed in that premise that if one were to challenge somebody else, there could actually be a rational discussion.
well,
And
it doesn't.
that's great. I wish it was the case, but it isn't. It
Yes.
not because people bring so
The
much.
cops are coming. Do you hear him?
Yeah. Sorry, my microphone's working really well.
We're on the
they're
watch.
picking up. But even as recently, I had a conversation with friends about the decriminalizing marijuana and products, cannabis, and I said, I think it actually could be an entry-level drug, and I was seriously chastised for that. And then I said, secondly, if we just treat it as a business, sort of any kind of manufacturing business, there needs to be an efficient supply chain. And sure enough, and then I was chastised that I was anti-decriminalization and anti-legalization. I said, well,
Do you see my shirt up today, by the way?
Yeah, I do. Marinara. The point being is that, if there's no supply chain, you can't. What's happened in Canada is the industry hasn't flourished. In the States, it has. So actually, I was right. I could have been right in both of those instances.
Yeah.
But because someone was so passionate about making sure this is legalized, they didn't hear me. They didn't hear me at all.
Yeah.
That was a year ago. And we argued to the point where I said, look, our friendship's going to actually break down because we can't do this. Sure enough, a year later, exactly those two things have happened. Well, not the first one, but the supply chains have broken down to the point where the industry can't get supply.
No. This is actually an interesting.
Right.
I've never used marijuana or marijuana products in my life, but we're seeing, like, I see posts online and stuff, and a lot of people who do use marijuana products, they won't go to the legal stores because apparently they're more expensive and the product's not as good. So I don't, and I don't. That's anecdotal, but
I've read about it. I've read about, because that is not the case in the U.S. and their industry is thriving. I listened to a business channel on the radio, and they're talking about all these marijuana cannabis companies that went public.
Yeah.
And so we're getting this really objective dialogue about Canadian companies that are just dropping dead because they can't solve these fundamental business issues. But I couldn't get that point across to someone because they were so emotionally wrapped up and committed to the concept, the subjective part of that, right?
Yeah. The last time I went to Las Vegas, by the way, which was about a year ago, we flew in, and actually about 6 months ago, we flew in, we got on an Uber, and the Uber driver asked us if we wanted to stop at a fast food place or a marijuana shop.
No way, really?
Yeah, those were the two things that most people, I said, I'm kind of curious, like, what percentage of people, would you say do both when they've arrived? He says, the marijuana shop's probably, 1 or 2 out of 10, and the fast foods, give or take around the same.
Oh.
And I was just like, I was astonished, right? Because and everywhere in Las Vegas, there was, how Las Vegas advertises everything, the shows, all these big signs and the signs on the trucks going down the street and stuff. Marijuana signs everywhere in Las Vegas. Oh, right? Yeah.
How come they can do it and we can't? There's one store on Vancouver Island.
Well, because we
it's in Port Hardy or something.
I don't know. Yeah, I think the reason is because it's we don't do hype around businesses the same way. Like honestly, what's the big Canadian brand that's hyped that you would watch, like, you know, they put up a big poster board in Times Square.
Yeah,
What's
well,
the
it
big,
it
what's the
used to
big
be beer.
Canadian?
It used to be beer, Molson's beer.
Yeah,
Used
even
to be,
though
right?
Molson Beer has never been that good,
I know.
and their advertising when it was interesting was mostly just mirroring American advertising. They have had a few you know, knocks out of the park with like the Joe Canadian. I think that was Molson,
I think
but
there
you
was
know,
Tim Hortons maybe.
honestly, those, you know, anytime a Canadian brand makes a big splash, it's typically the exception, not the rule,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Canada has a thriving industry of copying other countries'
But
successes.
we generally are good business people.
Sure.
And we
Yeah.
generally, you know, understand how business works and are as competitive as anyone else.
Oh yeah. Well, and
the government isn't allowing, you know, the bureaucracy to move fast enough to allow these cannabis companies to set up.
Yeah, it's a lost opportunity, really, because
It is, because we could have been good at this.
global leaders. Yeah, I think it was Elizabeth May, but one of the federal leaders came out and said that they were in favor of legalizing all drugs, much as Portugal has.
Right.
I can't remember for sure. I think it was Elizabeth May. Anyway, I think that's a good thing too. We, you know, we've treated drugs as a criminal thing for a long time, and it just hasn't worked out so well for anybody.
Well, because of this core notion that somehow we're really unable to have really an objective discussion regularly and consistent among each other. If you look at the statistics in Portugal, it's literally eliminated overdoses. It's literally eliminated homelessness.
Yeah.
It's done so many good things, but we could never get there here. Never.
Well, the usage, like, last time I looked at Portugal was probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, just out of curiosity, see where they were at. But the number
I keep looking at my little dog, by the way.
Show him to the audience.
Okay, hold on.
The number of users of marijuana in Portugal, as I understand, is about the same as it was percentage-wise when they started. And the number of users,
there he is.
As Mr. President.
That's right. My son called him that, and I am forever regretful. There he is.
Well, you can just start calling him Obama. I mean,
yeah, that's right. I don't think anyone would link it to that name. Anyway, you can see that he has no interest in being up here. That's what I'm looking at.
I have an orange cat, and I call him Mr. President from time to time. But yeah, so the statistics of hard drug use in Portugal at the time that I looked were actually down. Like, users were actually down. So a bunch of people obviously stopped using because they were able to get the medical help they needed, right? But honestly, I think the bigger issue, John, is this whole homelessness explosion we're seeing in North America. Like, every city now has tent cities going up everywhere, right? Oh, yeah. And it's all, I'm assuming, and again, I'm not a social expert, but I'm assuming it's all kind of, being driven or accelerated by the opioid situation.
Plus massive income inequality. I mean, it's almost become normal down in California and LA.
Yeah.
There are literally blocks and blocks and miles of folks living on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And then there are neighborhoods and communities built within these homeless communities.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if they're being policed.
But it's not just wealthy cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco with the income inequalities. They're seeing it in moderately wealthy cities all over the US and all over Canada, right? Where, I don't know. I mean, when you look at a situation like San Francisco, it's pretty easy to pick it apart and say, well, obviously, you've got houses that cost, or condos that cost $2 million. How on earth is a school teacher supposed to, pay for that, right? And so there's huge issues all around that, right? But I think San Francisco.
I'm very passionate about them. One day I'd like to talk about them.
Yeah, I don't think San Francisco's problem is a whole lot different than Austin or any of these.
Or anywhere in the world, almost, right?
Yeah.
The cost of living and somewhere to live, which should be a right in my humble opinion. But are we going to see that come up in this election, this Canadian election? I don't know. Complete lack of, labor market resources for companies to grow. Are we going to see immigration come up in this election? I don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to get to the real stuff. Do you remember years ago, you might have, when Kim Campbell was running for, it was the post-Mulroney era, and he was doomed. He went from majority to 2 seats. And she was the prime minister for what, 6 months?
Something like that.
She lost, and because he handed her just a ton of dirt and crap. But she was at the beginning very honest and very genuine about what the real problems are. And it basically eliminated her from the campaign for being honest and accountable. Like, back to that issue, because we kind of segued into other stuff. I'd like to just keep this as a theme. I don't know how we're going to have this conversation when we're going to be attacked on it so easily. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in '93 the Tory machine was broken, right? And Kim Campbell could have been the greatest person in the world. She wasn't. She didn't have a chance.
I know. I totally with you. But do you remember her saying an honest evaluation of deficit financing?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, we sort of need it. And it was like, whoa, you're done.
And I
Trudeau says it and gets elected.
Yeah. Well, there's that.
Right.
Yeah. I was definitely on the other side of the, young, optimistic Paul was not in favor of that deficit spending, and and I was really astonished actually that the Liberal Party did as well as they did when they got elected. I remember during the debates, Kim Campbell and Chrétien saying that the Reform Party was, lost their mind thinking they were going to balance the budget in 3 years, and then they did it in 4. It was like they probably could have done it in 3, but they did it in 4, maybe because they didn't want to prove that the idea wasn't that crazy after all. I don't know. Obviously, there was a lot of macroeconomic factors, in terms of inflation and stuff that changed. And interest rates went way down over that period, which was, honestly, if you look at the entire Mulroney era, most of the deficits that they generated, which was a lot, which was massive, most of them were actually not operational, but were actually interest on interest from the previous borrowing at high rates. So, the explosion of debt in Canada that predated the 90s was actually, you could point to Trudeau Sr. actually. And then Mulroney's government did actually balance the operational budget. If you go and you look, they actually did balance the operational budget, but they couldn't get control over the.
Well, then Chrétien's government through Martin, as you recall, dumped so many federal services onto the provinces.
Oh yeah.
And eliminated a lot of the outstanding debt by pushing it down, and then they even went down to the municipalities
and including housing. Their whole housing strategy disappeared, which coincide and their health spending around mental health dropped off as well, right? And so a lot of these things we are dealing with today we could certainly point back to a lack of foresight,
We could draw so many lines.
Yeah, but then again, you got to remember in 1992, I think it was, Canada was featured on the front cover of the New York Times as the next third world country because our finances were in such bad shape, right? So what are you, ultimately.
I'd like you to find that. That would be fun to find that and put it on the internet onto social media now. Okay, listen, we're at about an hour, my friend, and I don't know how it's entirely possible that you and I can talk for this long.
What are we talking about today?
I don't know what we're going to talk about.
Let's get it started already. Come on.
When you're dealing with a bit of an OCD buddy here, John is, and I'm getting restless, and I got to move on. But man, this has been fun.
Yeah. So we're doing this now every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, absolutely.
And we're going to have all of these in video form on the internet, on our YouTube channel. So if you have not already subscribed to John, Paul, and Mike on the YouTubes, then do it now, because you'll eventually start seeing these videos pop up. We're actually going to refine our video skills a little bit and put a bit of production quality to it. But if you've enjoyed listening to John, Paul, and Mike on podcast, then very soon you can begin to listen to John, Paul, and Mike on YouTube.
And that's fantastic, because we do seem to have an ability, and we certainly have things to say.
Yeah.
Which is where this started. People say to me, we've done about 60 podcasts. Well, geez, how did this start? Remember, it was just in a restaurant. Okay, we looked at each other. Mainstream media is being obliterated, because we both had abilities to talk through mainstream media. And you and I just said to each other, well, we actually have stuff to say, but really nobody wants to listen. So let's just record it.
And I believe what we also said was so that if ever we run for political office, people can go back and look at what we said and hold it against us 10 years later. I think that was.
Did we say that? Well,
no, we did not.
And we're basically guaranteed not to ever win.
Yeah, we're now on the record for way too much. So
yeah, that's right.
My run for prime ministership may be hampered by something I said 4 years ago.
Hey, listen, if somebody wants to be a guest with us, how do we do that? Can we bring in a third?
Yeah.
Can we?
Yeah. For those of you listening, we're doing the Zoom platform, and I think you can have like crazy numbers of people on Zoom.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it would get unruly at a certain point, and you'd have little tiny
we'd all be yakking at each other. Okay, Paul, I can't wait till we chat again. Okay. And very much look forward to relaunching our YouTube site, because it's actually out there.
Yeah.
It's got some stuff from years ago.
Well, the last federal election we covered live. I don't think we're going to do that this time, but you can go and see how bad our predictions were if you're interested.
It was so disappointing, if you recall, because he basically won it by the time he got out of the Maritimes. Like he got every seat out of there. Yeah. And then they got every seat in Quebec. Or
a good chunk of them. That was the orange wave, wasn't it? Last election?
It was sort of the breakdown. Layton had really made the wave, and then
the next guy,
Mulcair secured some. They're going to lose all of them this time. And my prediction is that Trudeau's going to be prime minister before he gets out of Ontario, because they're going to win everything in Toronto.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I honestly haven't had a really good look to the point where I'd make a prediction. I do feel like Trudeau's been underwhelming, but
so have the others,
Well, that's my point. So is everyone else, and so I think the turnout's going to go way down. I don't think there's a lot of interest. I wouldn't be shocked if we start hitting low 50s for turnout.
Well, going back to the very beginning of what we started to talk about, is the issue of accountability. They're going to paint Doug Ford, the premier, as another Donald Trump. Whatever you think about him, that's generally not good in Canada. And without any sort of objective evaluation of what his policies are, he will be Donald Trump Canada.
Sure.
And because of that, people will vote. They won't vote for him. I don't even know what he does. They hate him. They hate him. But
oh yeah. Well, this is honestly, I'd love to see a strategy like that backfire. Not because I like him or because I like Donald Trump or anything like that. I'm just sick of it. I'm tired of this nonsensical. Everyone that I don't like is a Nazi.
Right.
Therefore, vote for me. Hey, here's an idea. Why don't we talk about policy ideas? Why don't we talk about how we're going to make Canada better, and how we're going to deal with the technology issues that we're faced with, and homelessness and, everything else that this country's.
Yeah, you won't see that in this election. I'm sorry.
It's just going to be more finger pointing, and and I've seen the Green Party engage in that too, and I know that they really tried not to do that last election, and I found that really commendable. It wasn't consistent, but I found it really commendable. Now they're doing it too. And
because what did it result in? No growth of seats at all. Maybe were they at 2? And so, at some point you go, political practicality forces you to this place, this ugly place where really objective, fact-based thinking is put to the back room. I mean, I think true. I've been out here anyway, amongst my network of friends who generally are, let's say, right wing or maybe voted conservative or etc., are really mad at me for my forecast that he's going to be prime minister before he gets out of Toronto. Yeah. I'm sorry, out of Ontario, but they're not really understanding how this now works.
I'm mad at you for
Doug Ford, the evil gnome of North America.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And we're seeing that in BC, and it's like a lot of people are like, who's Doug Ford? Like they don't even really know who he is. But I think the big thing here is that we're going to see a lower voter turnout because so many people are going to be turned off by that process. Yeah. And I really feel like and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's just, again, my naive optimism. I really feel like we could get to a point where the number of people who are disenfranchised could, if they were re-enfranchised, if that's a word, could actually impact an election. And you think about it, right? If we're looking at a 55% voter turnout, that's 45% of voters that didn't bother. Those 45% of voters, if they all showed up and voted for the same party, they would have an absolute majority, right?
I've never understood this.
Yeah, and so this whole driving, and lots of people like to complain about tactics used in the U.S. for voter suppression and stuff. Like, we're doing the same, and it's not just one party on one side. We're all doing it. Yeah. We're all doing it, and it's got to stop if we're going to actually have democracy. I mean, how do if the voter rolls go down to 30 or 40%? Can we even claim that we're a democracy anymore?
Well, yes. Yeah. So yesterday, and I know we're trying to end this thing, but look at you and I, man, oh man. So yesterday there was an election in North Carolina
and Manitoba.
Oh, right, and North Carolina, and in a district that Trump won by 12 points in 2016, and yesterday the Republican won by maybe 1 or 2 points. Okay, so that's a reflection of I think how he's done, but
it was also
Democratic vote was at 39%.
Yeah,
and so then now the Democratic Party pundits are going, what is it going to take to get people out? Mm-hmm. Well, I think to your point, negativity, gotcha commentary, social media bullying, all of this stuff is accumulating into people abandoning the democratic principle. Yeah. And that's what Trump is hoping for. They are hoping for that.
I disagree with you. I don't think Trump hopes for that. I think Trump is...
Somebody does on the other side.
Trump is motivated by how can people pay attention to Trump? That's all he's motivated by.
Okay, Republican strategists then. Because their vote is diminishing. You're right. If all of the non-Republican voters voted, it would be an obliteration. There's more of them down there.
Well, yeah,
than there are Republican voters.
Here's the flip side of that coin, and I don't know how much you follow the other side, but the flip side of that coin is every Democrat presidential candidate, for example, essentially, holds the views that Donald Trump is a fascist, dictator, blah blah blah. Use all the buzzwords, right? Racist, you know, and if
Well, not every one of them was. There's
No,
a whole slew in the middle that
most
thought
of
he
them,
would,
most of
that
them,
he
and
thought that made him president.
I think of like Beto O'Rourke in particular, who came right out and said, you know, oh, Donald Trump is just a racist, but he didn't stop at that. He said anybody who voted for Donald Trump is susceptible, you know, and is probably, you know, like, and here's the problem, right? People, it's not a good strategy. Winning people over to your side, if that's your objective, right? Your objective is, I want to win people over to my side, and you're a Democrat. Why don't you do like Obama and inspire people, right? Talk about change and talk, you know, and Obama's, I mean, we can talk all day about Obama's campaign strategy lacking depth, because it did. But do you know what Obama did was he inspired people. He had a positive message,
Yeah, but
right?
let Paul,
And
hold on. Let me tell you.
The Democratic
Beto O'Rourke
strategy right
came
now,
out.
the Democratic strategy right now appears to be, and maybe it's just because we're in the presidential run, right? But it appears to be point at all of your opponents and anybody who ever supported them and call them terrible names.
Yeah, no, here's what happened. Beto O'Rourke nearly wins Texas, okay? He's deemed to be the superstar candidate. He comes out and he garners 1 or 2% of the vote.
Yeah.
So then they sit back and go, whoa, we've raised about $50 million. You've got 2%. So he decides to go this dirty route. Now, my friend, I really got to go. I know we could spend more time, but my dog is staring at me here.
I'm talking about politics. What?
I know, right? I cannot wait to see you and chat with you again.
For anybody who is listening on our sign off here still, thank you for listening this long. Send us a message on Facebook or Twitter that you listened to the entire thing, and we will send you a gold star. And
that's right.
And please tell us the topics you think John and I would be interesting talking about.
Yeah, Paul and I and friends.
Yeah, and if you think there's a cool guest or something, introduce us.
Yeah,
and we'll see
I love chatting with you, my friend. Take care.
You
Have
too.
a great afternoon. Bye.
Bye-bye.